Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Donovan here with High Off Blue Hour, and in this video we are going to be making some motion graphic overlays with transparency within Fusion. So to give you kind of an idea of what I'm talking about here, I'm going to pull some into the timeline that I've already made. Some of them I made just messing around. One of them I actually used on my other channel with a particular video, so we're just going to kind of get an idea of what we're talking about here. This right here is just a Batmobile concept that I pulled out of Midjourney and removed the background, and I added some kind of flame exhaust in the back, and I used a headlight PSD file from Photoshop to create the headlights coming on and flashing on and off. And none of it is just extremely realistic or even practical, because the actual headlight animation that I use doesn't actually kind of match the look of the headlights of the actual vehicle. But it's all just to kind of show, once again, the functionality of everything. I'm going to press play. It's just like a 5-second animation. It might be a little choppy, I don't know, but we'll see, because a lot of times things in the timeline are choppy when I have OBS on at the same time. But yeah, that's it. It's just a really short 5-second animation that's actually meant to be looped or doubled up. So that's an example. Let me actually go ahead and double it up. All right, so let's go ahead and play this again. And it's hard to tell because it's on a black background, but this has transparency. There is no background to this image, so you can put, you know, whatever up under it and it will be visible. So just to kind of drive that point home, let me just pull something in here. And this is just, yeah, just a little kind of background or whatever. So boom, so we actually, there is transparency to this image. And because of the way I cropped it, let me make it a little bigger so that, let's press play one more time. And just that the flame is an actual MP4 animation of a flame, but the headlights are just, those are the, you know, that's not an actual, originally wasn't an animation. It's just a spotlight brush out of Photoshop with just with no background, basically, or the alpha gain turned all the way down. So that's one example of what I'm talking about in terms of motion graphic overlays. And obviously, you know, you can do titles, anything, as long as it's in motion and it's an overlay, can be considered a motion graphic overlay. But let's pull in something else. This is one that I used in I've done a couple videos on Bret Hart and Ric Flair, and this is one of the graphics that I used for a couple of these videos. And all it is, these are two PNG file images of Ric Flair that were brought into Fusion, and then I also brought, you know, used the text editor within Fusion as well. So all of the editing that was done with these was done within Fusion. The flame effect, actually, that was edited in the editing tab in the editing page. Let me press play. It was edited in the editing tab and then turned into a compound clip, and that compound clip was in, I then brought that into Fusion and added it in. And so that's all that is. And that within the video, it was used in a short and was just looped for however long it needed to be looped for, like looped twice or something like that. So that's an example right there. So we're going to look at one more example. And what this is just a, well, at least one more, maybe two more, but for sure we're going to look at this one. This is a vehicle that basically what it is, I took a PNG file of a vehicle, removed the background, and then I also got a PNG file of a tire and removed the background and used both of those images within Fusion to create an animation of just wheels turning on a vehicle. And then when you overlay this image on top of a scrolling background, you get the illusion of, you know, an animation of a vehicle rolling down the street, driving along as the background scrolls by. But see, this is just a really simple thing. The only thing I did here in terms of creating motion is I keyframed the tires. And I really only keyframed one tire. This tire here, I edited, brought in a singular tire, downsized it so that it fit on the vehicle properly, keyframed the rotation of the tire, and then I copied that, made a copy of that animation, doubled it up, and moved one of them to the back so that it was on the back tire. So you had an animation of both the back tire and the front tire rolling. And then I created a compound clip out of those image, out of that animation of the tires rolling, and then pulled that compound clip into Fusion with this car, and then we got where we got here. All right, so enough of that. Let's go ahead and make something together, and then you'll really kind of get the idea of how to do this if you don't know how to do it. So what we're going to do, we want to make a new Fusion composition, so we're going to come over here and drag Fusion composition into our timeline, and we're just going to make this about, let's just make 8 seconds is enough, because we're not trying to do anything too epic right now. And then we're going to go into the Fusion tab by clicking the Fusion button down here. And so once we're into Fusion, we have our media out node, and everything that we're going to be doing in Fusion to get it to go into our final product, to get it to go into our timeline so that it can eventually be exported, it all has to come out of media out here. So we're going to move this down here, and then we're going to come up here and drag down background. So now we got a background node. We want to connect this to our media out node. And then what we're going to do, make sure our background node is highlighted, and we're going to come over here into the inspector. And right here where it says alpha, we're going to drag this all the way down. And that gives us our background transparency by doing that. You see how it went from black to this checkerboard type pattern, and that checkerboard pattern indicates transparency. And so now what we're going to do, I haven't even really thought about what type of animation we're going to do. I pulled in a few things just to like have some things pulled in. So what I'll do, I guess I'll pull in RoboCop here. So we got RoboCop, and I'm going to rename this to RoboCop. Anytime I pull something into Fusion, I have to label it properly so that I don't lose track of what I'm working with. And then you take RoboCop, and we're going to click on this kind of end of the node here and drag the yellow line so that it connects to the end of the background node. And when I let go, a merge node is going to be automatically created for our RoboCop node. So boom, we got our merge node, and now RoboCop is visible. If you noticed, you noticed without the merge node there, even though RoboCop is here on the Fusion playing field, so to speak, you don't see him. So you have to connect him to the playing field by way of a merge node. So now he's involved here, he's visible. And then if you want to make sure that you can do things with him in terms of transforming him and changing, editing, the size and the look and all that type of stuff, you're going to bring in a transform node, drag it over this line till the line turns 2 colors, indicating you can connect. So let go, and now our transform node is connected. So now RoboCop is completely in play here because you have him in the playing field, and he's attached to a transform node, which allows you to transform him, and that node is attached to the merge node, which is the node that puts him in our process here. So we got RoboCop in there, and we can move him around and all that stuff now that he's in play. So we're going to bring him down just a little bit, and we're going to go back into our editing tab, and we are going to add some fireworks for his firearm. So we're going to bring in this is just an animation of like a burst of basically a fireball. You know, not the most timely time, I guess, to be using some of this terminology, but, you know, it kind of is what it is. But so bringing this in here, going to resize this. And what we're going to do is I'm going to crop it just a little bit just to get some of the stuff that's not needed at all. Just a little bit. It might not even be necessary to do this since I'm going to try to make things as transparent as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'll go down here to the composite tab and change this from normal to add. So you get a level of transparency there. Then I'm going to click the transform overlay over here just to move this around a little bit easier. You're going to bring it up here. So we're going to go about right there. Maybe make it a little smaller so it's a little bit more. Alright, and so we're going to do a scrub through. I'm not going to press play because it's going to be choppy anyways. I'm going to just do a scrub through to make sure it's doing what we need it to do. And now this is a super unrealistic burst of flame for a firearm because, you know, it's not supposed, the flame is not supposed to just be held like that. It's not supposed to stay ignited like that. It looks more like a torch or a lighter, but we're just gonna leave it like that just because we're not necessarily going for realism here. So now what we want to do, yeah, we're gonna add some more stuff. We're gonna bring in this lightning, this kind of electricity type situation. Get rid of the audio on it. We're gonna bring this in and overlap as well. And do some similar things with this in terms of downsizing it some and adding, going down and changing the composite situation, changing the composite mode from normal to add so that we got a certain level of transparency. And let's continue kind of, I guess I'll bring it down here. I kind of want the electricity to kind of just surround him to a certain degree. And once again, let's just do a scrub through on the timeline to see everything's in motion there. And then what we'll do, copy this and double it up and then shorten it so that everything kind of fits within the little, what is it, 8 seconds or whatever that we got here, 8 seconds. Copy, double it up, and shorten that time frame. All right, boom. And then what we're gonna do is our two basic like lighting elements we have here, the electricity and our fire bursts. We're gonna highlight everything or highlight those, leave the fusion composition alone. Right click and we're gonna go up to new compound clip. And then we're gonna give the option to name our compound clip, and I'm just gonna call this lighting elements, I guess. Doesn't really matter what it's named as long as you can identify it, I guess. So now we have a compound clip made, but we're gonna move this off to the side, keep it on the timeline, but move it off to the side so that it's not over the fusion composition anymore. And now let's go into fusion once again, and then we're going to bring our compound clip that we just made, we're going to drag that into fusion. So let's, here it is, lighting elements, drag it into fusion, drop it, gonna have to rename it, call it lighting, okay. And now, like we did with RoboCop, we're gonna attach this to the process by way of merge. Got our automatic merge node there now. Then we also are going to bring in a transform node. That might not even be necessary for this, but just kind of a rule of thumb. I like the elements that I'm able to transform. I like to have that option there by having that transform node in there. And then what we want to do to make sure we have transparency and get rid of that black background on our lightning, click on this merge node down here that's below the lightning, and then we're going to go over into the inspector tab, and where it says alpha gain, we're going to drag that all the way down. So that black background should be gone now. So let's go back into the editing tab. And we can actually get rid of this right here. Get rid of that. Now let's do a quick scrub through of the fusion composition just to make sure our elements are present. Our elements are present. All right. And so now we're going to export this. This is just a very simple, this isn't meant to be like the greatest looking thing you've ever seen. It's just to show the elements in action and how do we get to the point where we have transparency. And that's what we're about to work on, because we're about to export this. We just have just a RoboCop, image of RoboCop holding his pistol up, a very unrealistic fireball coming from the end of his pistol, and some electrical elements just flashing around him. All right, that's all this is. So we're going to export. So we want to go down to deliver, the deliver tab. And this part is the portion that, you know, makes one of the things that makes all the difference in the world. The first thing was when I talked about our background node definitely needing to have the alpha gain turned down. That was very critical to everything, and this is very critical as well. So what we'll do, we're going to name our file. We'll just call it RoboCop animation. And okay, so our steps, how the process for exporting this with transparency goes as such. We want this to be in QuickTime mode, because that's QuickTime, or MOV is the type of file that's going to be produced here. And you know, that file is a file, it's not the most accessible file to view it on its own, but you can bring these files into editing suites like Resolve, like Premiere, like, you know, I talked about Capcut Desktop. You can bring QuickTime / MOV files into editing suites and overlay them on, you know, on top of graphics and stuff, and then, you know, you export your final project in MP4 or whatever format you want to do it in. So you want QuickTime format. The codec you want to be GoPro Cineform, and then you want your type to be RGB 16-bit. So we got QuickTime format, GoPro Cineform, and RGB 16-bit for the type. And then you want to come down and you want to make sure to check export alpha. That's the critical move, because that's how you're going to have the transparency going on here. And then we're going to do add to render, which is, you know, you're going to pick which folder you want this to go to. All right, so this is the folder I'm going to send it to. This folder where I've been sending some of these types of animations. I click save, and now we're going to hit render all, and this is going to render down, and then we're going to take a look at the final rendering, so then you'll actually be able to see it kind of in its full motion. All right, so now we have our RoboCop animation all rendered down. Let's bring it into the timeline. Let's press play. We got a lot of lag going on. Obviously, this is a 8-second clip. Let me do a drag through, a scrub through of the timeline. So that really gives you the better idea of what it looks like in full motion. Let me press play. It's crazy how the scrubbing through the timeline produces a better quality playback than actually just pressing play. So yeah, I got lag going on right now, which, like I said, when I'm recording with OBS at the same time, this often happens with this computer. But one more time, there we go, maybe something a little bit more smoother. What I'm going to do is I'm going to double this up, actually. Copy, paste. All right, got it doubled up. Let's play one more time. There we go. So we got a good look at it in action here. Just got the muzzle flame coming off the muzzle. Very unrealistic, but there it is. And then you got the electrical energy swirling all around Mr. Murphy. And then I guess, you know, we want to make sure that there's transparency going on. So let's bring in a background here. just to drive home the transparency. There we go. Definitely got some transparency going on here. So let's go ahead and press play again. And now once again, you're getting this hesitation because we are in the timeline right now. You overlay this on a project, do what you got to do with the project, and then export your project as normal. This is going to play just fine. It's going to play fine and fluid in the final project. So yeah, that's it. I guess it's already been kind of a long video, so I'll go ahead and cut this off here. That's just a very simple process of creating animation, motion graphic overlays with transparency in the Fusion tab. Now, maybe it goes without saying, but all of this actually could have been made to a certain degree, could have been made in the editing tab as well. But you have the alpha gain options and whatnot when you go into Fusion and things like that. Plus, there's just a lot more flexibility and just capability once you go into Fusion. The editing tab is a lot more of a simple way to do certain things and is easier to learn. But once you get doing graphics and stuff in the editing tab down, when you go into Fusion, a lot of the same ideas translate. And when you finally do get comfortable with Fusion, you'll be glad that you did take the time to learn at least the basics of Fusion. So that is the video, you guys. Thanks for watching. Hopefully I will catch you on the next one.